Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. This is Umar from Echo. I'll be your host tonight. We've got a great list of panelists. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining. Sally, thank you for joining. Naren will be joining us by 7:40. Michelle, I know you're there. Just your video is not turned on. If you could just say hello, we'll just make sure that. Hi. Hi. Okay, so I've got uh, everyone here. Let's get started. This webinar is everything you need to know about buying, marketing, growing device revenue. We know that devices are a major investment, and tonight is all about making sure that investment pays off. So I'm very excited with speaking with all four panelists. We've got uh, intriguing, interesting questions for each one of them. Uh, and let's get started. Uh, Before we jump into the discussion with each panelist, a big thank you to our sponsor, Equa Marketing. They've been a digital marketing leader in the aesthetic space for 2 decades, helping practices grow with SEO, call tracking, website, and successfully launching new devices. As a thank you for your attendance here, everyone gets a 60-minute strategy session. Just check the Zoom chat or scan the QR code on your screen right now. All right, let's start with our first panelist, Rebecca, CEO of Apex Aesthetic Consulting. Thank you so much. Welcome for joining. I've got a list of questions, but just to give an overview of what Rebecca does, she works with aesthetic practices on business planning, staffing, operations, and device decision making. Helps practices assess risk versus ROI before investing in capital equipment. She, in her previous life, was a nurse and a med spa director, brings both clinical and operational insight. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining. We've got a list of questions.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
You're very welcome. I'm sure the audience is excited as well. And we've got a few questions that we screened from all of the questions that we've got, and I'll start with that. Our first question is, have you taken time to research different laser technologies, manufacturers, and treatments options before deciding on a purchase?
Yeah, so just a little bit more background as well on myself. So, I was a practice owner for many years, but about 10 years ago, I left owning my practice to sell lasers. So, no booze from the audience, please. I will say that I've done my penance since leaving that industry to help other business owners not make some of the same mistakes that I made and that other providers have made in purchasing lasers. So I've kind of been on both sides of the coin, right? I've done both the aesthetic practice ownership, utilized the devices, and then also sold them. I think there's quite a bit about the laser industry that a lot of people may not quite understand, in that, these companies themselves that are manufacturing these devices, some of it has social proof, some of it's going to be new technology. Ultimately, we're kind of all going to be utilizing the same wavelengths to be doing the same things. There's always kind of something new out there that companies are trying to sell, and therefore reps are trying to sell. And I think one of the biggest mistakes that a lot of first-time laser buyers especially make is to purchase a device that the rep came in and told them to purchase versus a few different things. You want to make sure that the wavelength, what it is that you're trying to treat with the laser is going to be treatable with that wavelength that they're trying to sell you. That the device is both safe and efficacious for that condition, and that you're looking at what you want out of a device before you're taking these conversations. When I hear of a provider who has made a purchase and later regrets it, it's often because the laser rep came in. They maybe weren't even looking for a device, but the rep came in and sold them on a specific technology. They created a need in their office where maybe there wasn't one there. We've made a lot of promises, a lot of over promising in terms of what the ROI of those devices will be. And then the provider is there with a device that they can't utilize in their practice because it's either not safe for the demographic of patients that they're generally treating, or in the worst case scenario, and I've talked about this on other BOA webinars before, I can't stress enough doing independent research on whether or not a device can be utilized by you in your practice in your state. I've known of many reps that have sold devices telling people it's FDA approved and that they are able to do the treatments within their scope of practice, to find out that in that particular state, maybe an RN can't run a CO2, maybe only an MD can, and an RN owned med spa owner buys that device and then is literally unable to perform the treatment with the device that they just invested in, and either have to take the loss or then hire an MD to perform the treatment, which of course dramatically impacts ROI and the conversation around that. So I think, when it comes to deciding to make a laser purchase, you need to strongly look at what it is that you're looking to treat. And for example, maybe it's browns and reds. The answer to that is going to be an IPL device, or maybe a combination, Alex and YAG, right? Nothing else out there in terms of RF or any of these other things are going to necessarily treat that, because the laser wavelength is, the treatment's determined by what chromophore is going to be attracted to what laser wavelength. So knowing really what these different wavelengths are, what these machines really are doing, will tell you if that's the right fit for your next purchase. And I don't ever believe in purchasing a device that a laser rep told me I need in my practice versus what is the thing that I'm missing specifically for my patients. So you have to do your due diligence. You cannot trust anything a laser rep says. And I don't mean that in a negative way about my former peers. It's generally top down from the laser companies. Unfortunately, it's a corporate culture around make the sale no matter what, make the promises no matter what. And
Yeah.
so sometimes I think reps don't know, maybe they don't even know that you can't perform that treatment as an RN, but they're just going to tell you that you can because they want to make the sale. And it's a kind of that corporate culture from the top down. So literally anything that they tell you about the device, about its clinical efficacy, about its safety in all the skin types, about its ROI, about your ability to do the treatments, you need to independently verify that. You cannot take a laser rep's word for it.
Yeah, makes sense. And thank you. That's such an important first step. We have a follow-up to that from someone in the chat. They say that, if you're short on time or overwhelmed by options, what's a quick way to start narrowing things down? I feel like if you're short on time, that itself signals that you're under pressure. No?
So I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because, again, the tactics, and I'm going to give
Yeah.
so many industry secrets that are probably going to get me in trouble. Thank goodness I don't sell lasers anymore. I think really a lot of times this call to action that they're forcing you to make a decision because it's the end of the month, the end of the quarter, one fell off the truck, it got returned because somebody's credit fell through. I can tell you, I've told every story, I've heard every story. There is almost never a time where the price that they're giving you today won't be available tomorrow. They're wanting you to make a very quick decision because they don't want you to ask these difficult questions. If it feels like you don't have time to look, then you're probably moving too fast on a decision of that nature. And these devices really range anywhere from $40,000 to $400,000. That's a very large investment. So outside of reaching out to me directly and saying, these are my options, what do you think I can do in a short amount of time? Or one of the other panelists or a colleague that you might trust, I would say, if you're feeling short on time, it's time to just take a break and reevaluate and do your due diligence and go from there. But ultimately, I'd say my favorite place to go in terms of laser science is ASLMS, and that's the laser safety board, and that's going to have very basic kind of laser physics and understanding of wavelengths that could help a beginner decide if it's the right wavelength or not. That's probably where I would start.
And for our viewers, that is asml.com, correct?
It's ASLMS.
Got it. Got it. Excellent.
Yeah.
Next question. Are we accounting for the total cost of ownership, and does that include maintenance, consumables, and staff training?
Yeah. So I think that's another in kind of doing our due diligence with researching whether or not this is a good decision to make or not.
Mhm.
Another strategy that a lot of these companies will use is, of course, to kind of give you, this is the cost of the device. You can get into this technology for, let's call it $100,000. And the treatments are $3,000 to the patient. So therefore, it's however many patients you're going to make your ROI. And there is often never a conversation about what is it going to cost me after my first year of warranty, right? And I can tell you for most of the major laser company, those warranties are more than a car year over year. And that conversation is almost never had. And, that they talk a lot, the rep will tell you, yep, we'll totally train you. We'll totally train you. What they fail to mention is that trainer's going to come out one time the day after that device is delivered. They're going to teach you a 3-hour class on all things laser physics, which is not nearly enough to provide safe and efficacious treatments. And then you're never going to see that rep or be able to get a hold of them again. The rep is, or that trainer, I'm sorry, the reps are never qualified to train you in almost any case. They're, they were never, they sold copiers before they did this job. They weren't a nurse or a laser technician in most cases. So, there's the additional cost of staff training from your state as well. There are certain states that even if you get a certificate from the laser company, if you are not independently trained by a laser board within your state, that could be $1,500 per employee, $3,000 per employee. You have to factor all of those costs in. And then ultimately the consumable as well. I struggle on the side of being a business owner with devices that have consumables, with the exception, of course, of your types of devices that you need to have a new tip for sterility, like ready for microneedling or something along those lines. Of course, that is very different. Having a consumable cost because of having to change something out is one thing. I think it's completely another when we have to have a USB card to make our device work, or we have to buy pulses, or we have to replace hand pieces because they've pulsed out. All of those are ways to continue to add the lifetime cost of ownership to a device long after that loan. So, I think you need to have, and these are, I would also highly encourage every single person who's having these conversations with your reps to get everything in writing, because it's very easy to make promises over the phone. And if you don't have an email to back it up, then you're kind of stuck. So, have this is exactly the cost of the consumable. This is exactly the cost of the warranty. Let me see a warranty contract. What is that going to look like, at year 2 and beyond? What are other what are normal costs of repairs for this? What does my IPL handpiece cost to replace when it's quote unquote pulsed out? You need to know all of those things. And then additionally, and I think often, these conversations are not being had with the provider because we're again trying to quick to close. Is this a treatment that I'm going to have to make an investment in other technology in order to effectively utilize? For example, a very painful treatment. Now we may have to turn around and say, do I need a Zimmer to cool the skin off in order to make that comfortable for the patient? Do I need a Pronox system? Do I need to be blocking more time to do a dental block? Like all of these factors. Do I need to purchase a new kind of camera to effectively take before and after pictures? Do I need to buy a bunch of disposables like gel? I mean, there's just always, and it's hard to know. And they are not going to volunteer this information. And unfortunately, like outside of this webinar, I just don't see a lot of information out there for physicians or in business owners who are going to make these purchases to get this information. It's really, the industry has kept a lot of this close to the chest, and it's been to the detriment of the people purchasing the devices. That's why I started my company when I left laser sales. It's just too many people taken advantage of. So that I would say getting all of that really clear cut in writing, before making any kind of decision.
That's great, right? Getting to know those hidden costs, before or making it visible can really affect ROI. Among all of these costs, which do you think are the most occurring or most severe that may actually become deal breakers? Like you mentioned training, you mentioned investment in other technologies.
I would say, truth be told, I think the biggest cost, and it is the most egregious, is the cost of the service contracts. So the
Mhm.
warranty to maintain
I
your
see.
ownership. So you could buy, I mean, for example, I've worked for three major laser companies as a laser rep, and you can find me on LinkedIn and know which ones they are. I won't say them in this webinar, but two out of the three and many of the competitors, the warranty, your device is $200,000. You've been locked into a shady loan, which we'll probably talk about in the next question. Um, and so now you're paying, $2,500 to $3,000 a month. Your year is up, and then they say, okay, well, you've had this device for a year, and lucky if you've been trained and gained any revenue at this point. Now they're going to say the warranty on that device is $30,000 for another year, $20,000 for another year, $15,000 for another year. It is rare I've seen something under the $10,000 mark. Now, I did have one company I worked for that the warranty cost was only 10% of what the purchase price of your device was, and that was on the lower end of $3,500 to $7,500 a year, which I think is reasonable, right? We do want to insure our investment. So I think having a service contract is good. I think it's egregious to say that you need to spend $30,000 a year to maintain a service contract or a warranty. So I would not want to get in bed with a company who's really overcharging just for the sake of, their profit margin and not to your benefit. Because they also don't tell you in a lot of cases that may not even cover every part. So you pay
Yeah.
your $30,000 warranty, then it turns out your IPL handpiece has pulsed out, and now you have to purchase a new one for 15,000. You're still 5 years, 4 years deep in your loan. So it is almost impossible to get out of that hole. So I think we just have to, that's the cost that I would be most concerned about getting in writing. Um, and anyone who tells you that they can't do that, again, they're just trying to hide from you what the cost will be so that you have a surprise a year from now. And likely that laser rep has moved on to another company. So you can't even call and yell at them.
Makes sense. Thank you so much for sharing. We're getting some more questions live, but just a
Mhm.
note for all the audience members, we'll have a separate section for all live questions. So please wait for that to happen. That's around the 8 p.m. mark. But thank you so much for sharing that, Rebecca. And I do agree that, note for everyone joining, look at the warranty, look at multi-year warranty deals and see how that happens. And obviously, get in touch with Rebecca if you are not sure on how to proceed. Next question, you mentioned about loans, and yes, we want to know how have you been asked to submit a credit application or use a specific lender before fully understanding the cost in terms of this device?
I would imagine that most people, especially again in kind of that first laser purchase, and I hear it often, and it sometimes prevents my clients from wanting to purchase another device, is in that first purchase, we don't know what we don't know. And all of the laser companies out there come with their preferred lender, most of whom, unfortunately, are selling you predatory loans. And they're not disclosing the terms and conditions of those loans during that purchasing process. And often the rep will say, I don't know anything about that. That's not in my wheelhouse. I just sell lasers. I don't know about the financing. Here, text my guy at X finance company. He'll be able to answer your questions. So you text his finance guy and he says, you know, um, this is going to be your payment. And what they'll say then when you ask, what's my interest rate on the loan? They'll say something along the lines of, well, it averages out to about 8%. The ultimate truth about it is many of these are predatory in the sense they are paying a significant amount of higher interest up front. They're not simple interest loans. And truth be told, this is not my wheelhouse, but what I do know is they're stacking a heavy amount of interest up front. So even if you were to want to pay that off, which you often are unable to do in these predatory loans, they don't tell you. You have to pay for your full 60 months, or you have a payoff penalty to do it early, or you can pay it off with no penalty, but you're going to pay the full amount of interest. So at that point, there's no reason to pay the loan off if you're going to be paying the same amount, at 60 months as you would today. So I am hesitant to recommend anyone to purchase a device with those aesthetic, um, the preferred lenders from the laser companies. There are a few out there that are okay. But as of today, most of the banks that will give a small business loan in this industry for capital equipment purchasing, you're looking at probably an 8 to 12% interest rate, depending on what your credit looks like. That's going to be 26 to 35% with a lot of these or with a lot of these vendor loans. So if you go to your own bank and you don't qualify for one of the, a small business loan from your actual bank, and you are forced to only get approved by their lender, that might be a good time to step back and say, I don't know if this is the right time to make a purchase like this, because ultimately you will pay heavy. I mean, I know people who have gotten into loans that they don't realize, because we're playing a lot of funny numbers games in this paperwork, that $200,000 laser that they agreed to is going to be $500,000 by the time they've finished the length of their loan. And often, that essentially crushes your profitability. You are having to make more than $500,000 before, and that, again, we're not talking about warranty, parts replacements, consumables, anything, right? So you're in for $1 million at that point. And if you are a newer practice, or you're a non-core, so you're not a derm or a plastic, maybe you're a medical provider in a different field, can you guarantee in your own mind $1 million worth of patients, right? Of selling of packages? I would be hard pressed to think anyone here can guarantee that they're going to be able to do that. So I caution people to really decide if this is like the right decision at the right moment. And then additionally, a tactic that I'm really very cautious of and remind people of is, if they're a little, again, kind of holding the cards close to their chest when you ask them about the price of the device, and the laser rep's answer is to say, it depends on what you qualify for. What that actually means is, if you're a well-qualified buyer, like you're a plastic surgeon with an 850 credit score, you're going to get approved for that $250,000 laser, and they're going to tell you it's $250,000 and they got you a great deal. If you are a non-core provider, or you've only been in business for 3 years, or you have moderate credit, they might approve you for 100K. And the truth is, you're going to get the same device that the plastic surgeon paid 250 for. You're going to get it for 100, because they want to close that deal, and they were able to get you just in that amount of that loan. So it can go both ways, right? Like, that might be advantageous to somebody who wouldn't or ordinarily qualify for the full 250,000, but then if you are a risky investment, they're going to charge you a 35 to 40% interest rate at that 100,000 again. So it's like, you have to be very careful. If they won't tell you what the cost of the device is until you fill out the credit application, or, I'm sorry, as we used to like to call it, a business profile, when it's legitimately a credit application, that means they're waiting to see what you qualify for to tell you what the price of the device is. And again, personally, I wouldn't want to get into bed with any company that's their strategy around pricing. It just doesn't feel ethical.
True, I completely agree, and I don't think that's something a lot of attendees might have considered. But at least in terms of loans, usually when you prepay, there shouldn't be any penalty. Is that still not the case
So
as much?
these lenders can write in whatever terms that they want to write in. That's why I kind of describe it as being pretty predatory. Because sure, in most cases, right, you finance your car, you finance your home. One of the
Yeah,
things the financial advisor tells you is make an extra mortgage payment a month,
yeah.
and you'll pay your house off 12 years sooner than you would have, right? It's not always the case in these loans,
Wow.
where they will say you are responsible for the full amount of this loan, and whether you pay it off early or not, you're going to pay for that full amount of interest. Oh, I would encourage, again, and I'm glad you brought that follow up, because the other thing that I think is almost never mentioned, and where these loans are also pretty predatory, is that they will generally not tell you, but almost always there's a clause in there that you're personally guaranteeing that loan. So even if this loan is going in the business's name, and you were to decide, okay, this was a bad purchase, I need to walk away, I'm just going to stop paying on my loan, they can come and repo the device, right? That would be your thought. Just like, I just stop paying on my car, they're going to come repo my car. It's not how it works. They're not coming in and knocking down the door and taking that device back. What they're doing is suing you for the remainder, and that's on your credit. That's your personal guarantee. And often people don't necessarily realize the impact it can have on their personal credit to when they get into these predatory loans. So if you are getting loan paperwork from a company and all it is a little bit of information about your payment and one or two little lines of terms and conditions, they're not telling you the whole story. Just like, when you sign your mortgage, your paperwork's 50 pages deep. So think, if there are not clear and set guidelines in their terms and conditions, there's something to be concerned about.
Wow. Wow. Uh, Moving on to some lighter topics regarding.
No one's ever going to buy a laser again. I know.
But at least we got rid of the elephant in the room, right? These are important topics, and where it requires transparency, it needs to be discussed. And if not here, then where? Next question is, is the device we're considering capable of performing multiple treatments or being upgraded as new technologies emerge?
So that's what I was going to say is I think sometimes the reason why people have gotten into a situation where they were unhappy with their initial laser purchase is that in a multidisciplinary practice where we're maybe doing some aesthetics, we're doing some we want to add laser treatments, we're doing injectables. It can be an excellent way to scale your business. But my advice would be not to make your first purchase a device that does one singular thing, especially one singular thing that it's extremely niche. When we do that, we're hoping that we're going to get this number of patients in and they're going to help us recoup our investment. But if it's something that's like a device that just does chin lipo, and I'm just throwing that out there as an example, right? Then you're going to need to have enough patients that want chin lipo to pay your loan back, right? And maybe if you're a facial plastic surgeon and you have somebody in office you're delegating some chin lipo to, and it's just another revenue stream that's going to get you, people to eventually do a facelift, all right, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you are an OBGYN or you're a derm or a nurse owner or a laser technician or I'm sorry, an esthetician, and you want to bring a laser to your practice and you're doing what I call general aesthetics, we're doing some tox filler, some skin treatments, I would go in with a multidisciplinary platform that's going to give you in one device the ability to do a lot of different treatments. There are several companies that offer them out there. It's going to have something like IPL, laser hair removal, maybe a resurfacing, non-ablative or ablative, erbium or fractionated, like a 1540 or a 1927, those wavelengths that are going to be superficial resurfacing. Maybe it's got a tattoo removal handpiece. It's probably got a 1064 to do, the vessels on the face or leg veins. And essentially what that does is that offers you, and I used to joke when I sold them that I would call it a med spa in a box, and it would basically give you the opportunity to offer an entire, set of services that can be revenue generating possibilities with one singular machine, with one singular loan, one singular payment. So I think if that's the first device that you bring on, you're much more likely to be able to go, this is kind of like shooting fish in a barrel, right? If we have 150 patients and we're offering 15 services with this one device, there's a pretty good chance there that every patient's going to have something that they want to do with that device versus trying to find, again, a very niche, trying to do a very niche treatment. So I do think laser, and I will be very clear that I think lasers can be an excellent investment if you're doing, if you're making the right decisions. And unfortunately, like you said, there just isn't really a resource out there to disseminate this information to the public about, what are the right things to make. And then the other thing too, I used to get asked all the time as a laser rep, what happens, when are you guys going to come out with a new one of these in a year? Am I going to be able to upgrade? What I do say about true laser wavelengths, about that technology that's on the market, it hasn't changed in 25 years. We know, for example, that a 1064 nanometer wavelength is going to specifically, that target's going to be hemoglobin. It's going to do what it's supposed to do. So those devices don't always need to be upgraded regularly because that technology's been around, right? You could probably buy a 25-year-old CO2 on the secondhand market right now, and it would do the job that a CO2 is doing today. that, those things you don't necessarily need to upgrade all the time. But I do think you want to just make sure that we're having conversations around how versatile is this going to continue to be? Will I be able to add other hand pieces on over time? Will there be some expansion to this type of platform? As all valid questions to when you're trying to take a look at that profitability.
Makes sense. So choose versatility over super specialization, at least if it's your first purchase, right?
Correct. I mean, and I think the roadmap in a lot of cases is you start with a platform device like that, and then as you're treating your patients, you're going to start to know what, especially people who are doing injectables, what are the things that my patients are asking for that I'm unable to treat with what's currently in my toolbox. And what I can tell you is that the progression that I generally see is a platform device, then maybe radiofrequency microneedling, then maybe something a little bit more aggressive because we need to treat around the eyes. We have clients that have a lot of crepiness. Maybe we need to do something like a non-surgical bleph. Maybe we're getting CO2. At one point, body contouring used to fit in with that. I don't know that's not the direction I would go in much anymore, kind of post GLP-1 era. Skin tightening, though, that would be a huge one. Skin tightening versus, say, fat reduction. So that tends to be how we walk before we run.
Yeah.
I think when you buy something, and also, and that I should mention this too, sometimes the reps will come in and say, this is $3,500 a treatment, so you only need to sell one a month. Like you only need one patient a month in order to cover your loan. Well, that certainly makes sense. However, if all of your services are, we're doing tax, we're doing $600 filler, maybe we have a $150 facial, maybe we're doing a $250 hydrofacial, and that's all we offer in our practice. And now the next thing that we have is a $3,500 CO2 treatment. We got a big gap there. So you want to start filling. I think it's important to fill things in that are in that price range of $350 to $1,000 per treatment before jumping into things that are $3,500 a treatment or $3,000 a series or in that number.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Final question, Rebecca. Uh, do we have a plan for training, marketing, and launching support that doesn't necessarily rely on the laser company or sales reps?
So this is my favorite topic to talk about because I think what brought me into the laser industry in the first place, I was actually a post sales rep for a company where I used to go in and I would help the people would purchase a laser and I would help them with their marketing and I would do client events. And that's a really great, and that was a fun job for me. The companies are continuing to employ those people. They might call them a practice development manager, or they might call them an account manager, whatever it might be. And they're supposed to be the post-sale rep, and their job is to help you, right? To sell the packages. Ultimately, I think the expectation of, well, I should say, we are over-promising in the sales process about what that individual soul is going to be able to do for that individual's business. And then we are falling extremely short of expectation in the help that the company is going to give us. And if you are a newer or greener company and you're going to need a lot of training and you need help with pricing out services and you don't even know language to put in an email to market to your clients, that level of hands-on support is not what you will receive. What they fail to mention to you is that person that is your post-sale rep. They're probably not the esthetician who works at the med spa down the street. They're probably 4 states away with 500 accounts. And just like your injectable reps, you're going to get the best support from if you are their top 1%. So unless you're the top 1% of the user of that device, you're probably going to be passed off to, oh, you need more training, here's a webinar. Oh, you need more training, go look at this video on YouTube. Oh, you need help, go log into our marketing portal. There's plenty of social posts there. And all of that will fall short. You will not be successful following that model. You need to have a really succinct plan in place to quickly recoup your investment. And you cannot rely. So if you're on the fence and you're like, should I do this or shouldn't I do this? You know what? John Doe said that he's going to be in my office and he's going to talk to my patients and he's going to, deliver. And this is the rep. He's going to deliver, on all these promises. The joke has been for the last 10 years that I've been a rep. What's the number one way to get rid of your rep? It's to buy a laser. there will be very little support no matter what they promise. There will be very little support once that device has been dropped in your office. So have a plan. Know how your staff's going to get trained. Know, how that these prices, the packages should be priced. Again, this is doing due diligence, not letting the rep tell you what the prices should be. Even going into ChatGPT and saying, what if three, radio frequency microneedling treatments cost in the Chicagoland area, low, mid, high, and get realistic answers about, what those things should be. Um, and know also how you're going to market it. And are you going to be prepared? I mean, one of the things that I can say, hands down, the key to success with any device is going to be clinical confidence and being able to perform safe treatments. So clinical efficacy and safety, right? And the only way to do that is to really know the treatment that you're going to be performing. And the only way to do that is to take that that nurse that's going to come in and train you from the laser company, take that training very seriously, ask for whatever pre-work you can ahead of time, have that office stocked full of models so that you're doing as many treatments as possible in that short few hours they're going to give you. And then on day 2, have 3 to 5 patients a week that you are treating on that modality so it becomes muscle memory and so that you're good at it. What I often find is we have all this excitement about the device, we get trained on it, but we haven't pre-sold packages, we haven't done anything to market the device prior to kind of launching it. And now 3 to 6 months later, we're finally getting that first patient in to do that CO2. And what's the first thing that the provider is going to say is, I don't remember anything from training. Now we're not providing an excellent treatment. Maybe we're not performing a safe treatment. That's not going to get you repeat clients, right? So I think the key thing is really from day one. And to me, day one is about 45 days before you're signing that laser contract. And I will say, and I've done several BOA webinars at this point, but the reason why they asked me to do this webinar today was a viral blog post I put out right when I started my consulting firm. And it basically said, what are the 10 mistakes that aesthetic practice owners make when buying a laser? And I think it was maybe the first time something like this had ever been kind of disseminated to the general public. And I get calls every day, Facebook messages, Instagram messages every day. I bought this device 6 months ago. What do I do now? I haven't made $1 on it. Or a number of different things. Or I'm about to buy this device. What do you think? I'm between these two devices. What do you think? And there isn't a lot of space out there besides the women on this panel. There's not a lot of space out there where you can get kind of like nonpartisan advice on this, because the reps are all going to say what they want you to hear. And they're going to badmouth, you can even say, well, what do you think about this other device I'm looking at? That will be the worst device on the market if it's not theirs. And so there just really isn't a lot out there for people to get true advice about these purchases. So, that's one service I do provide. And I consistently say, this is my penance for having sold lasers for 10 years, is that now I will make sure that no other business owner makes the same mistakes. Oh, Omar, I think you're muted.
Yeah, so plenty to learn. Thank you so much for sharing, Rebecca. I think that's a great checklist for any practice evaluating a major investment. And did you say the name of the blog post was Avoiding Common Mistakes Aesthetic Practice Owners Make When Purchasing Aesthetic Lasers? Okay,
That's
great.
correct. Yep.
I'm going to put that on the chat for anyone interested for an offline read. And just to recap, right? If you are looking to make a significant investment, Rebecca will help you ask the right questions before buying so we don't regret the purchase later. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, Rebecca. And we have 2 questions from an anonymous attendee and Casey Leber. If you're still on the call, please wait till 8:30 for those questions to be answered by Rebecca. All right, we'll move on to our next panelist. Sally Bivens, thank you so much for joining. She's the Vice President of VP of Sales at Image Medical, and she's also the founder of Aesthetic Capital Experts. Sally has, deep experience in device sales and vendor negotiations. helps med spa owners secure capital and choose high ROI treatments, works closely with new practice owners or solo entrepreneurs. And we're very happy to have you here, Sally. Thank you so much for your patience. I've got a list of questions to go over with you, but very short time, but I'll
Yep.
do my best. Uh, let's start. What are the first things someone opening a med spa needs to consider before investing in a device?
So I think first and foremost, somebody has to have a vision for what it is that they want to do, right? I think it's important. I think people are like, I want to get into aesthetics. I want to have a med spa, and a med spa has just become this kind of blanket name. And a lot of times they just go and they buy what they've heard of or what they see the most often, what they think is the most popular, rather than doing due diligence. But I think first and foremost, it's having a vision for what kind of practice you want to have. What do you want it to look like? What do you want your brand to look like? What type of practice is it going to be? Are you going to lean on regenerative? Are you going to lean, more towards your general aesthetics? And then it's, that's going to determine what kind of treatments you're going to be offering, right? Are you going to do regenerative? Are you going to do sexual health and wellness? Are you going to do pain along with aesthetics? Are you going to do weight loss and GLP-1s? Or are you going to do these, technology-based treatments that, you're going to need to have a well-rounded aesthetic menu of services? And the treatments that you offer, like Rebecca said, are going to determine two things. One, the devices that you're going to purchase based on the treatments you want to offer. And two, the staff that you need to have based on your state laws, right? And so what that's going to do is going to determine your budget, not only for your devices, but for your staff. Okay. And then also for the supplies and the long-term cost of these things, which, I agree with Rebecca on everything that she said. She's right about everything. You have to take into consider, all of those things, ask all of those questions. And then ultimately, how you're going to market your practice based on this vision, based on these treatments that you're going to offer, based on the devices that you're going to have, right? And what kind of, if any, collaboration you're going to get from those manufacturers in regards to marketing, which, to what Rebecca said as well, is very limited. I've always said, in some of the capacities that I've worked in sales management within the space, I've always leaned less away from the manufacturer providing, the post-sale service and support, and more on creating partnerships with stellar vendors within that space who that's all they do, right? Marketing for the practice. So build that into the acquisition of the sale so that they're financing their marketing package with that aesthetic device, right? So it's not something that they have to pay out of pocket with. They can finance into the acquisition of the system. So find some manufacturers maybe that are partnered with some really solid vendors within the space.
Makes sense. And those are all good uh, recommendation. But what about some mistakes that we come across? Some that, common mistakes or traps new owners, fall through when choosing their first device. I think it's
Yeah.
more of a trend, but
Well, I think trends are a big part of it. I think, you know, when and I have middle school and teenage girls, they follow the trends, right? And the trend never lasts. That's why it is a trend is a trend. A lot of times these newer devices come out and, they kind of take the industry by wildfire and everyone has one. Well, that's the problem, is if you buy one and then the guy down the street buys one and then the guy down the street from him buys one, ultimately what ends up happening is not only does that manufacturer end up taking a nosedive on their own because they have too much market share, but it also cannibalizes all of the businesses that they sold to near one another. And I think to what Rebecca said too, CO2s have been around for a long time. NDX have been around for a long time. RF microneedling now has been around for quite a while. It's important to maybe sit back for a minute and to do some of your research. I think to what Rebecca said too, do your research, but it's daunting. Like, I've been in this space for 15 years, clinically as a practice owner, selling devices, consulting. My husband is a master injector, so I've been in this space in kind of a whole bunch of different ways. And it's a daunting industry, especially with all the devices out there, to try to know what it is that you're buying. So lean on people like myself, like Rebecca, like other people within the space who have a great reputation, and maybe do most of your due diligence on who you're going to work with in that regard, and lean on them for their expertise and what it is that you're going to buy, rather than trying to understand all of the different devices against one another, because ultimately, I think if you follow that trend, you're going to pay a pretty penny and your ROI is not going to be what you want it to be. And I think I do think that that's the biggest mistake, is following trends.
That's a great framework, which leads us to our next question. And I think it's too simple to answer. Which devices and treatments render the highest ROI?
Well, if you look at statistics like
Yeah.
AmSpa, and Rebecca laid out ASLMS, right, as a really great
Yeah.
resource. And they're great for lasers. And a lot of what she talked about is laser, laser, laser. But there's so many different technological treatments out there that are not light-based, that are, radio frequency, microneedling, all different kinds of things within the space. And so I think from a statistical standpoint, we've seen, you know, microdermabrasion is a staple. You have to strip that stratum corneum. So whether you're doing it with a hydrodermabrasion unit, or you're doing it with a standalone microderm, or we have a microneedling pen that has a nanotip that does microderm on it, that has been a staple for 30 years. And then the three other treatments that we see most often are Botox or neurotoxins, dermal fillers, hair removal, because everyone's always going to have hair that they want to have removed, right? And then AmSpa laid out that the fourth most common were what we called aesthetic services. And so or esthetician services, I should say. And so it's anything that an esthetician can do within a practice, which again is based on the state laws, but that can be, facials, microderm, hydrodermabrasion, the staples within that space. So your most comprehensive, your fastest ROI are going to be on devices that are lower cost, and they are out there, with good post-sale service and support, with good warranty. But so a lower initial investment, I do think, to what Rebecca said, was right. Initially, maybe think about getting a platform device, right? Something that's going to offer a multitude of different treatments, that you're going to be able to market all of those treatments and gain all of those patients across all of those different treatments. The only problem with platform devices and limiting yourself to that specifically in the beginning is, God forbid, but it happens, that device goes down. Even if you're down for 2 days, you're down every treatment that device offers. You have nothing else to fall back on. So it's important to have things like microneedling. Microneedling is the fastest ROI in the space. The devices cost, we've seen them, a good one somewhere between $2,000 and $5,000, right? If you sell a couple of packages of full face and neck microneedling, you've more than paid off that device. And now you can do it with hair restoration. Hair restoration, you can charge a pretty penny for. Your consumables very, very low. Microneedling should be a staple for every practice.
Got it. I'm glad we were able to discover one specific treatment and device. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, if there were devices of similar or same modality, what are the real differentiators that we can look at to evaluate?
Yeah. So again, a YAG is a YAG, a CO2 is a CO2, microneedling is microneedling. So what are the differentiators, right? There are certainly advancements that are being made, that have been made over the years. I think a lot of it in the light-based side of it, specifically more in IPL, is the advancements that have been made in maybe being able to only treat type 1 to type 3 or type 4 skin. And now you have IPLs that can treat all 6 skin types, right? So it's understanding your demographic and making sure that you're going to be able to treat based on your demographic with those modalities that you have. But ultimately, shop it out. If you go and you're buying a car, you're going to shop around. You're going to test drive the car. You're going to want to ask to demo. You're going to want to see it. You can find. I'm avidly against buying on the tertiary market. I am not a fan of buying secondary devices. I definitely encourage people to buy from the manufacturer. To what Rebecca said, a lot of them have well over 50% margin. And so I would kind of go into a situation where you're buying a device knowing that margin is there, and just have a budget for yourself. And I think that's a part of creating this vision, creating this business plan, and knowing what your budget is based on what it is that you want to offer, those treatments, those devices, your staff. So have an idea of what your budget is before you go and buy each one of those things. Because ultimately, RF microneedling's RF microneedling, microneedling's microneedling, right? We talked about all this. So just buy smart, understand your long-term costs, what your consumables look like, what your warranties look like, and just be smart about the process.
I think those are very practical insights on how to think about value versus hype, which leads to our next question, and Rebecca touched upon it a bit. What should one ask when purchasing the device?
Yeah. I think again what Rebecca said is what is the price of the device? Not what am I going to
The
qualify for? What
overall
is the price of the device? And what they're
real
going to tell
price.
you, or what they should tell you, is the list price of the device. Okay. The next thing you're going to want to ask them is, how long is my warranty? Okay. And what does that warranty cover? Industry standard in this space for capital equipment, for the most part, is 1 year warranty. But there are several manufacturers that will offer 2 and 3 year warranties with the acquisition of the system. There are several more that will actually allow you to buy additional years of warranty with the acquisition of the system that can all be financed. And quite honestly, if you're going to take out a 4 or 5 year loan, you better have a 4 or 5 year warranty. So you might as well just build that warranty in on the front end. And I will say that there are some manufacturers, and Rebecca, I did look at some of the places that you did work before, so I understand why you're coming out with these massive numbers. But industry standard is about 10% of the list price of the device on an annual basis after that warranty period is up. So that's something that should be expected. And what she said too, what is the consumables? I'm also avidly against buying a device where you have to have a USB or a key to actually use your device. It's not like nobody goes and buys a car and then they take your key away and they have to give you a new key so that you can start your car again. It's just silly. But there are certain things too. Rebecca mentioned, pulse out. IPLs pulse out. By definition, it's a light bulb. Over time, those bulbs go dim, right? And so the FDA does have a requirement of variation margin, essentially, that an IPL can have. Right? It's like 20%. So 20% of the power that it has from day one, it has to maintain until they intentionally pulse it out. Of course, the manufacturers are going to want to replace it after a certain amount of time, so they're going to pulse it out probably a little sooner than that. But there's plenty of them that, as long as you maintain that warranty, it never really pulses out, or they continue to replace those handpieces. So things like that. And then also understand, like, what does my warranty cover? Are there pieces that are consumable? So I used to sell a platform device, and they said it was bumper to bumper. But then when you would have there was like a reducer for the IPL, it kept breaking. And they were like, well, that's a consumable. But you said it was bumper to bumper. So again, same thing, have everything in writing. And I think the post-sale service and support. What's my training going to look like? How much training do I really need? How complex are these? I think that there are certain systems that are just unnecessarily complex, right? I think that there are very easy, simple to use interfaces. I think that's a part of test driving your device. Come in and see how simple it is to use. Because ultimately, if you're the practice owner, you're going to have staff turnover. And to what Rebecca said, the industry standard of getting a trainer to come back into your practice is training is not a profitable part of a manufacturer's business model. Okay. So if an additional training is required after the fact, they're usually charging upwards of $2,000 per day. So ask, what is my future training going to cost? What kind of support am I going to get after the fact? And I 100% agree with Rebecca. Do not rely on the manufacturer for your marketing support, for your launch support, for any of that.
Thank you. Thank you. Simple but very powerful. Sally, final question. One or two biggest challenges in owning a med spa, and how do we overcome them?
Well, the number one biggest challenge is getting people to walk in the door, right? And that's where the marketing piece comes into play. I think I opened my aesthetic practice in the midst of COVID with my husband in Florida. And that was the biggest slap in the face, because I had spent the first part of my career in clinical training. So I used to travel around and do some level of clinical training plus practice development support for the practices, and then moved into national account sales, strategic account sales, and then sales management. Um, and so I always, I would tell, this is so sad. I would tell practices like, just post on Facebook and boost your posts a little bit. And, you'll get people to come in the door. And that just tells you how much I knew as a clinical trainer at practice development without ever having owned a practice myself. The number one most exhausting thing that I ever did was go through and source out the good, the bad, and the ugly in the marketing space. You can get very good quality, high quality marketing affordably. So don't let them tell you it's going to cost 30,000, 60,000, whatever. The second biggest challenge is once you get that patient in the door and you've invested in all of these devices, how do you sell these treatments? How do you change a patient coming in the door and saying, all I need is my under eyes treated? Okay, so now you're stuck with just that. Because if you, the practitioner, say, well, don't you think maybe you also need this? Now you're not their best friend anymore. They're like, well, I didn't think I had a problem with that. Now you're telling me I need something else. Also, the fiduciary weight of the consultation is going to fall on the practitioner, or say the practice owner. So my suggestion is, and one of the biggest game changers for me and for every practice and that I've worked with in the space. I worked with two other manufacturers before I was with Image, and I had a doctor shortly after I got into sales, and I'd sold him a device. He called me one day and he said, "You have to look into this device." He said, "I sold its value in 2 days in what it was able to help me sell in treatments." And it was an Image Pro skin analysis device. And so I tell every single practice, get a skin analysis device and make it a staple and the only way that you do your consultations, because then it takes the fiduciary weight off the practitioner. The patient puts their face in here. It takes perfect before and after photos that you can use in social media, that you can use on your website later, that you can show quantifiable and objective results down the road. You can charge for it. You can charge $50 for your consultation. Let them know you're going to get a free comprehensive skin analysis. They get a PDF with all of their images, all of the data. And then as you go through, it's going to highlight your pores. It's going to highlight your wrinkles. It's going to highlight your laxity. It's going to give you facial symmetry angles. So if you do injectables, you're going to be able to tell them, like, you're angularly, if they're doing facial symmetry in the jawline, you're probably going to have to do, 1.5 syringes over here and maybe 3/4 of a syringe over here. If they came in only wanting to buy 1 syringe and you have a viable reason for now telling them you need to have at least 2 syringes, you've increased your treatment case acceptance with a valid reason. It shows pigment, so your IPL treatments, your laser treatments. It shows texture, so all of your resurfacing, your RF microneedling, your fractional laser resurfacing. It also helps you sell all of your skincare that are going to couple with, maintaining those results, ensuring that those results last, ensuring your revenue production, and making sure they're taking care of their skin after the fact. It will help you sell your packages. It will help you sell your membership models. So I strongly suggest that with the second biggest challenge that we see is converting those patients to a higher case cost acceptance. Use a skin analysis device in every one of your consultations as a tool to alleviate that fiduciary weight, again, away from the practitioner and the business owner or the clinician, and to leave it to the device to show them and to tell them, these are all the things that you need to have done with your skin. Here's your report. Here are your treatment suggestions. Take these home. Take a look at those images that we spit out of this thing. And ultimately, they're going to come back and agree to at least some of that treatment plan.
Wow. Thank you so much, Sally, for that. Those are super practical insights, especially for new device practice owners who want to purchase new devices. So for everyone that is joining us, Sally Beam has just completed her segment. Look forward to the video recording to hear the questions and the answers. She is the go-to person to pick the right devices and negotiate better deals. Thank you so much for that, Sally, and look forward to your participation in the Q&A. I'll move forward to our next panelist. joining us, Naren. Thank you so much for joining. Uh,
Hey, hi
uh,
Omar, how are you?
yeah,
I really enjoyed Sally's presentation, so appreciate Sally for all your insights.
yeah, we've had a great engagement. We've got many questions coming in. Very impactful presentation so far, Naren. I'm very excited to open the floor for you right now. So let's talk about what drives ROI. We've invested in a high-ticket device marketing. We own the most advanced laser on the market, but if patients don't understand what it does or worse, never heard about it, it's a sunk cost. So our next speaker has worked with hundreds of aesthetic practices and led thousands of campaigns. He's a founder of Equa Marketing and the Aesthetic Institute. Naren, thank you so much for joining. We'll start things off right away with our first question. And I think this is something that I myself struggle to answer from time to time. How is marketing a new device different from marketing a known service like Botox?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Omar. I think that's a great place to start. See, Botox is a known brand, right? Everybody knows Botox. So if you look at search history and see the number of people typing in Botox near me, Botox city name, Botox zip code, there's going to be thousands and thousands of people. That's the power of, branding and marketing done over, decades. Now, let's say the new device you have doesn't have that branding and, name recognition that Botox has. So when I wanted to market a new device, the way I would think about it is think about the problems it solves, not necessarily the device, because the device is new. Perhaps some people know it, but 90% of the people don't know what it is. So like focus on the problems it's solving. So for example, um, for example, if you have a device that's focused on sculpting your body, then the keyword could be body sculpting, city name, skin tightening, so different keywords. And a good tool that will tell you what these keywords are is Google Analytics. So Google will tell you all the keywords people are typing in to find you and where you are ranking at the top, meaning on page one. Remember, nobody goes to page two. So if you're not on page one, but let's say you are on page nine, that's a good candidate for you to go after. So look at all the different solutions, problems that people are searching for, and then go after those keywords. So that's the way I would focus on it. Um, now, um, now, there's a lot more to cover. SEO is just one piece of it. Now you
Yeah.
need to still convince them. You need to make them want to, choose you, make them want to, say yes to you. So there's a lot more to marketing, but starting point is, making sure you are the one they're seeing for all the different variations of keywords that they might be typing in.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Would you just follow up? Would you say device marketing takes more time to show results, Naren, especially with SEO, uh, than general marketing?
Yeah. Now, I know our speakers emphasize this. It's easy to buy a device that'll become a money suck. You sign a deal
Yeah.
and it's costing you
Yeah.
$5,000 a month.
Yeah.
So, of course, that's something you need to avoid, especially as a startup or somebody, who doesn't have a lot of profits to
Okay.
use to pay for these devices. Make good decisions, be smart about what devices you buy, keep the costs low, and so forth. Now, let's assume you have done all of that. Um, you know, um, what's your question? Does device marketing take time?
Takes more time with SEO.
Yeah. No, I mean, SEO is SEO is SEO. I mean, our clients rank for 100 or more keywords
Yeah.
on page one within a year one. And the
Yeah.
reason we pick that 100 keywords as a benchmark is once you get into that territory of ranking for 100 or more keywords, you get into the top 5%, meaning, whatever people type in, you're going to show up. So
Right.
it's kind of like easy for somebody who's playing at a certain level to win a championship versus somebody who's not playing at that level. So imagine SEO like what level you're playing in. And once you get into that 5% club, ranking for specific keywords is not a big deal. Of course, you have to pick the right keywords, whether it's symptoms or solutions or problems that people are trying to solve, and then you need to rank for those keywords. But if you are in the bottom 95% who's not ranking for anything, ranking for devices also is going to be hard because you're not doing all the things Google cares about. Therefore, it's like, somebody who's, let's say Tiger Woods, when he enters a competition, him winning that competition is very high because he's at a certain level, right? Same thing with SEO. SEO has a lot of components to it. If you're doing well in those pieces, you're going to rank really high. If you're not doing well in those pieces, you can try all day long, it's not going to work for you.
Makes sense. That's such a critical distinction. Thank you, Naren. Which leads us to the next question, right? Should we market with trends, patient education, or demand building? Let's say this device is trending online. Should a clinic focus on that hype or maybe lead with education?
Yeah, I know hype can be deceiving because when hype influences us, just like it influences the other person. The problem with hype is it might only influence a very tiny fraction of the population. So yes, lead with hype. In other words, if that device is in the news and so forth, and let's say Morpheus, you may want to make sure you have a page targeting that keyword. But if it's a brand new device versus a technology that has been there for a long time, like Botox, the amount of people who are going to be searching for that device will be very little comparatively, right? So that alone is not enough. So I would definitely lean into the hype, but I will continue to strengthen the solutions and the problems it solves and ranking
Right.
for those. And again, depending on your market, it could be, all kinds of variations of phrases and keywords. And again, don't assume, look at Google Analytics to figure out what those keywords are. Like, for example, if a particular keyword has 49 searches, the other one has 122, then prioritize the one with 122 searches a month. So always use analytics and data to go after a wide set of keywords. Now, that's still not enough, right? Like, remember I said marketing is more than just getting people to know you, which is what SEO and this type of marketing does. But then you also have to convince them to choose you. That's where I think I would use I would use before and after pictures. I would use reviews, and highlighting the relevant reviews on the relevant pages. People today, I mean, the keyword for web design and being successful in influencing people online is don't make me think. In other words, like, make it easy for me to say yes to you versus I have to jump through hoops and figure things out to say yes to you. So when I'm Googling something and I end up on the right landing page, give me the before and afters, give me some relevant reviews. So now very quickly I have all the information to say, yep, this sounds good. Let me call their office. And I've seen a lot of practices, I mean, 95% of them don't even rank, don't even show up. So like they don't exist as far as the customer is concerned. But assuming you are in that 5%, that's still not enough. You have to still do that before and afters and reviews to influence people to choose you.
That's such a fantastic approach, and you dwelled a little bit on the approaches of SEO. So let's dive into a question that expands on that, right? What's the ideal 30, 60, 90-day launch plan with SEO in mind? Like if I'm about to launch a new device with my
Yes.
practice, what should my team be doing 30 days out and 90 days in?
Right. So going back to the foundational things, I mean, there are a few foundational things you have to always do. Yes, you can rely on ads, but ads are going to be 5 to 10 times more expensive. But assuming you get into that top 5% of practices that's ranking for 100 or more keywords, now it's really easy for you to get traction with SEO. So for me, that is a foundational thing. Like if you're going to shut down your practice in 2 months or 6 months, then don't do it. But if you're here for the long haul, I would say be one of the practices in the top 5% that has this unfair advantage where you can just get as much free traffic as you want without paying a cent in ads and so forth. So assuming you have the foundational thing, the plan that I would go for is, create a landing page for that particular device, like RF micro needling. So, that would be an SEO optimized landing page. Again, you can have different kinds of keywords, city, zip code, etc., etc. So you start dominating that particular keyword. And then also don't stop there. Create other pages that are talking about the problems it's solving. Like let's say it's solving acne scars or skin laxity. You could have pages. Again, do the research, figure out what people are looking for in your neighborhood, prioritize based on which are the solutions or problems that are most popular that people are looking for, and then start launching those pages. And then obviously you should also optimize your Google My Business page. So in the Google My Business page, you can Google Business Profile page. You can make sure that you talk about that device, talk about those services. So people are seeing you not only on local search, not only on regular search, but also on local search. Now, local search is what shows up on Google Maps, and so forth. Now, usually people who do well in regular search will do well in the local search as well. Why? The things Google is looking at to decide if you are worthy to be in the top 5% are the same across the two. So for example, NAP, Lighthouse, Go, and so forth. So making sure that, you're not ignoring one or the other. Like you have a comprehensive plan. So whether it's local or regular, you show up. And then of course, so that those are things you will start doing 30 days before.
Yeah.
So, plan ahead. And then of course on the launch week, start pushing it out to your existing patient base. Perhaps you have an email list. Perhaps you have a social media with a decent number of followers. You could do that. If you have extra money and you really, really need to, make this work right off the bat, put some money into Google Ads. Now, the challenge with Google Ads is people don't trust ads. So you need like a lot more people to get the same results. So for example, 6 people from Google Ads is equal to 1 person from SEO. So from a long-term perspective, I would lean on
Wow.
SEO. But on a short-term perspective, just to kind of give it a boost, maybe add some Google Ads to it. But I wouldn't keep doing Google Ads, forever and ever. Finally, when I go to these pages, give me the photos, give me the testimonials, give me the reviews, so I'm more likely to say yes, and also make it easy for me to press a button and call your office, or that way I don't have to go hunt for your phone number and stuff. Especially on mobile, like make it so that like I just literally press call me and then it just calls you. So all the little things you can do to make it frictionless. Like for example, one of Amazon's geniuses is that the one-click purchase. You press one click and then all of a sudden you don't have to enter your credit card. You don't have to, do anything. It just says your product will show up tomorrow by, 6 p.m. And finally, as you start getting stronger and stronger on SEO, you will start seeing your ranking. So use Google Search Console to see how you're ranking, Google Analytics to see how you're ranking, and then keep improving the ranking. So don't stop there. Don't just say, hey, I did it, I'm done. No, just keep looking at the data and then, fine tuning it, target and adding additional content, or focusing on certain pages that are not ranking yet. And those pages, now you can start collecting before and after. So assuming you've been doing this for a while, like 30 days, you will hopefully have a few before and after. Start incorporating those. Start answering common questions people are asking you in the form of FAQ. Again, link it to the relevant keywords so they also are driving traffic to you. Longer term, testimonial content. This could be like reviews specific to the device, could be video, could be, a Google review itself or written review, and start, strengthening those pages so people start seeing you as the go-to person, as the go-to expert for that device, for that set of treatments. Now, this strategy that I'm talking about, we have done it in Beverly Hills and we have done it in smaller cities. It works beautifully. Of course, it takes thought, it takes planning, it takes execution. So it's all about like knowing what to do and then doing it precisely and perfectly.
Naren, I really like what you mentioned with regards to having an SEO dedicated page for that particular device. I've seen this personally, 2 practices, same area, marketing the same device that's come up, one doing exceptionally well, the other not at all. The problem was the other that was not doing well, it was directing all of its visits to the generalized homepage. And the practice that was doing well had an SEO optimized page, so people with intent landed on uh, the landing page, which was for that device versus the home page, which brings to the point that bottom line upfront, right? We want to give them exactly what they have come to the website for, right? I think that's a very useful distinction one can easily make to maximize their campaigns.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the power of this strategy is they trust you. It's
Yeah.
kind of like, you have a salesperson or an ad telling you go somewhere, and then you have, an authority, in this case, Google. That's why they're using Google telling you go somewhere. So they trust you right off the bat. But that's just like, think of it like saying hello. Now you have to convince them. That's where the before and afters, the other content comes in to really convince them, you are for real.
Makes sense. I would like to have asked the next question because you did mention ads, and I think this is important to address, and especially in this context. There's a tight budget. We purchase the new device. Should I, as a practice owner, invest in SEO or Google Ads?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you based on my experience, I would lean in on SEO. And like I said,
Mhm.
make sure your foundation is great. So let's say you are in the top 5%, you are ranking for 100 keywords. We have clients ranking for 700 keywords, 800 keywords. Remember, 100 is the bare minimum, but you
Yeah.
can keep going and going and going and build on things. So I would lean on SEO because SEO is free, right? And a click from SEO is worth 6 clicks from ads. So why would I spend 6 times as much money because they don't trust the ad versus I can spend. But if you are not in that top 5%, if you are not, like crushing SEO, then you have a problem. Like SEO won't work for you quickly. It'll take 6 months or whatever. So in those cases, then I would say go towards ads, because either you get no patients or you spend a lot of money and get those patients through ads. But if you are doing well with SEO, I would lean in on SEO first, and then I would use ads to just augment here and there. And it might be more like retargeting ads, not necessarily like keyword ads. What I mean by that is they already come to you through SEO. Now we follow them, with relevant ads or content based on
Makes
what they
sense.
were interested in. So like, even if they don't make the decision right away, then maybe in 6 months or, 3 months, because they keep seeing you again and again, they're more likely to call your office. And most people, people are all kinds, right? Some people decide quickly, some people need to see it again and again and again before they make a choice. So you want to make sure you're catering to, the whole spectrum of your customer base. Doesn't mean the one who decides quickly is better, or, the other one is worse. It's just that they're different. Like, we have to understand that. Some people think things through and go slow. Some people are impulsive and, like myself, and make quick decisions. So you want to cater to the whole spectrum of audience out there.
Makes sense, makes sense. So I really like what you said. If you're doing really good in SEO, use that as your advantage. If not, then use ads as a band-aid, short-term pain relief. But again, use an optimized SEO page and don't direct them to the general homepage, because then you'll be spending wasted budget, right?
That is an excellent question. I know this is a misunderstanding people have about marketing. Everybody looks at marketing through their own lens, not necessarily through the customer's lens. Customers don't care about everything else you do. They only care about that particular problem. So give them that, right? Not other stuff. Like, yes, you might also do Botox, but they didn't ask about Botox. They asked about skin tightening. So give them skin tightening. Give them before and afters around that. Give them proof around that. So, and again, going back to that don't make me think paradigm of thinking about, design is like your website is like, imagine having like 100 doors. Each door is a set of keywords that bring people in. Each one is looking for that particular thing. So give them the content or give them the information related to the thing they were interested in. So a lot of times people get so caught up on their own ideas and their own feelings about what is good and what is bad. They forget the customer. And today it's like, don't make me think, give me what I want, and make it easy for me to say yes to you. If you don't, I'm going to go find somebody else who will make it easy for me to say yes.
That was a great perspective, Naren. I have the final question for you. You touched upon this a little earlier. You said before and after photos and reviews for SEO and conversion, right? Seems like an advanced strategy. What is the smartest way to use before and after photos and reviews when marketing a device?
Yeah, so I think ideally it has to be your pictures. You can't borrow those pictures. I know it's like a chicken and egg problem. Like, you don't have patients to have pictures. So I would lean in on existing patients, even your team members, if it's relevant to them, having them benefit from that procedure and using pictures. So I definitely have authentic pictures. Now, when you launch the page that nobody's going to, you don't need pictures, right? Because you're not ranking on SEO, you're not ranking on the internet. So start, like we talked about, target the device name, target the services or the problems it's solving, start ranking for those, and over time start getting those before and after pictures. Of course, you want to be aware of privacy. You may want to hide the eyes, etc. And make sure that the patient is comfortable with what you're going to be sharing online. And there are tools nowadays that'll help you make it easy for you to get consent, and start sharing those pictures, sharing those cases. And eventually, if you're comfortable with videos, you could even create videos. And again, our team does many of these things for our clients. They will do the formatting and the cropping and optimizing and everything else. So it's starting to work for you. Of course, we can't make up the photo. You have to give it to us. So even with videos, like today, we can create videos using these photos. So maybe you can get a testimonial quote and some pictures, then we can create a nice video which has music, and so it's not like the patient has to sit there and in front of a camera and say wonderful things about you. Yes, that'll be perfect, but if that's not an option, because a lot of people don't want to be on camera, saying what their secrets to looking young or looking beautiful. So, but you can still create videos that are compelling. So I would continue to invest on this. The way I think about pictures and videos is, um, marketing is getting people to know you, right? That's where SEO comes in, making people aware that you can help them for those problems or those solutions as well as those devices, and then helping them like you. Liking you is, even like personalized videos where you're explaining something, so they feel like, oh, she's very easy to understand. She talks in simple language, so they kind of like you. Versus your competition is not doing that. And another key point you made, Omar, earlier is you can do this on social media, but you don't own the social media real estate. Facebook does, Instagram does. So they can decide what content to show for who. As opposed to your website, you own it. As long as you're ranking, nobody can take it away from you. You know what I mean? It's yours, it's your real estate. You own it, you have complete control over it. And the way social media works is 1% of users get all the free traffic. They are called influencers. So if you're not in that 1%, and you're putting a lot of effort into social media, only like 2 people see it, 3 people see it, and those people were not even looking for what you're doing, so it doesn't convert as much. I'm not saying you shouldn't aspire to be an influencer, get into that 1%. You absolutely should, but that's a lot of work. You're talking 10, 15 hours a week of like creating content and sharing content and becoming an expert who shares all kinds of content. And obviously with social media, you may also have to share content that is personal. But on the other hand, your website, you completely control. As long as it's ranking, nobody can take it away. So I would first focus on leveraging your website, leveraging things you completely control. And then once that is topped up, then if I have extra time, then I might go ahead and do this on platforms that I don't control, where the algorithms are controlled by other people, and the real estate or those pages are controlled by other people.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Thank you, Naren. I think that was a masterclass in turning marketing into measurable ROI. I do want to bring in Rebecca for a second because you did touch upon ads and the budget. So, Rebecca, a follow-up question. When you're discussing budgets with clients, especially when they're purchasing a new device, do you come across marketing as a cost, or do they assume that this marketing has already been done by the manufacturers?
So often they're going to assume, and again, during the sales process, the rep might say to you, we have this online portal, we have all this content that you can share. It's not robust. It's not the best, that's out there. But often to kind of overcome that roadblock or that hurdle, a lot of laser companies have partnered with these third-party marketing agencies that will do a website, do your social, maybe it's managing a membership, something along those lines, whatever it might be. And they're going to say, I've got this great service that I want to bundle in with, with the purchase of your laser. And it seems like this great idea. And, Sally mentioned about having really great partners in the industry that you can, kind of farm some of these things out to. I would be cautious of believing again that whatever the marketing is that's wrapped into the purchase with some of these laser reps is going to be sufficient to market the device. I do think from a budgeting standpoint, if we're going to invest in the equipment, then we need to invest in something like a third-party marketing consultant like Naren, like Equa Marketing, that's going to really be focused on driving business to your website to get those bookings. And I think he's absolutely right. I mean, what I've found after all this time in the industry, and all of my clients that are spending money on marketing, the biggest ROI they get is from Google, not from social, not from traditional older forms of advertising. While you do still see billboards or you do see, ads in magazines, it's going to be just really ranking on those Google pages. But I think when you're thinking about the overall cost of ownership, you should have money to market these treatments, externally, not just within your existing client base.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Thank you so much for sharing the perspective, Rebecca, and thank you, Naren. Again, for everyone that's joining in or just tuned in, we just finished the segment with Naren. If you'd like to hear the questions and answers, look forward to the recap. Again, Naren is here to help practices who have already invested or looking to invest in devices and need the patient volume to make it successful, right? And
Yeah,
if you
so
like, yeah.
we have a free offer, which is like what we do call a marketing strategy meeting, which is like a comprehensive review of how you are doing. Are you like in the top 5%? Are you not in the
Yeah.
top 5%? And how do you dominate Google? How do you dominate marketing in general? So we look at your competition, we look at you, and we'll give you a full report. The link is, I think, on chat, businessofesthetics.org/MSM. It's a $900 value. It's our gift to you. Take advantage of it, whether you work with us or not. At least I think Rebecca is right, and many people in this room are right. Like, buying a device may be the easy part. Getting patients and convincing them to choose you is where the rubber meets the road. So doing the easy one without doing the hard one means you will be having an expense which is costing you X dollars every month, but not necessarily giving you the ROI you want. So definitely I would say strengthen marketing. I think that should be like a core focus. Just like you go to training and continue to learn new things, you need to make sure you are like dominating marketing. Because once you dominate marketing, you have an unfair advantage. You can offer any service, you can offer any device, because you now have this machine that knows how to bring in the right patients for those services. So I would make it a priority. I would consider that one of the 6 or 7 things you pay attention to, either yourself or with the help of a partner, to really do well there. And I think the marketing strategy meeting would really give you some insights as to where you stand and what you need to do to dominate marketing. And then be smart, right? Money is, money is tight always, and the best businesses spend money wisely. So be smart. Do the things that give you the best results, not necessarily do the things that give you the least results, and be really, really thoughtful in making those decisions.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much, Naren. And anyone would like to connect with Naren's team for a one-on-one strategy session, just check the chat or the screen, scan the QR code, and book that meeting. Thanks again, Naren. Thank you, Rebecca, for chiming in. Now let's shift gears a little bit. We've got the dream team here so far. We've got the purchase, we've got the machine, we got the marketing done. Let's talk about staff and bring in Michelle Williams on the clinic side of growth. So let's here. All right. Thank you so much, Michelle, for joining, and apologies for the delay. You were supposed to start 20 minutes earlier, but as you can see, we're having a lot of engagement, a lot of questions. For everyone that's joining in, Michelle is a former spa manager turned trainer and team operations expert. She focuses on internal team performance, scripting, staff buy-in, and patient experience. Also helps spas integrate device into operations successfully and smoothly. And she's helping clinic teams and owners trying to boost retention and team performance. Practices where marketing works, but operations fall short. All right, without much further ado, Michelle, I have a list of questions. Let's start with the first one. Before buying a new device, what's the most important thing a med spa owner should consider? Michelle, we're having trouble hearing you. Let's try a quick mic check. Is anybody else able to hear Michelle? Okay.
Can you guys hear me now?
Very well, crystal clear. Thank you.
Okay, I think I had a lapel mic. I think the battery
No,
went dead while I was
no.
waiting to go on. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, yes.
Okay, well, first I just want to say hi to everybody. I appreciate you, those of you who are still on and who joined. We got a lot of really good information, by the way. I loved
Yeah.
hearing what everyone had to say. Rebecca had some really great points, and so did Sally. I loved hearing, about, and when you bring on a device, it is a huge decision. And I can tell you there's a lot of regret. And this is one of the things where the stakes are too high to really not listen to the advice that you got. I don't want to repeat, some of the things that they said, but I just want to add a few little points of my own. A lot of what mistakes I made. I actually owned a small med spa when I first started. I had my own little I say med spa. It was just me. I was a solo provider. I started out with just my own little spa, but I bought a device right away, and it was very expensive. In fact, at that time, I was a little bit younger, and I had never bought anything that expensive that I couldn't live in or drive around. It was pretty pricey, and that lease agreement sat on my dining room table for about 3 days. And every time my husband and I would walk past, little beads of sweat would pop out on our upper lip. And we finally made the plunge to buy that. But I know the stress and anxiety that can come with making that decision. And one of the things that I think is really important is that you have to pay attention to the data. You have to do your own research. You want to make sure that it's not based on what you want. That's the mistake that I made. When I was a career changer in 2008 when I got into this industry, and I got certified. I learned about all these different modalities, and I got so excited about a few of those that I just wanted to do it all day, every day for the rest of my life, right? And I saw these great transformations, and that's what I wanted to do. So I chose my device based on what I wanted to do. And trust me, there's nothing wrong with following your passions and trying to become an expert or building your spa that way. However, it took a long time for me to grow, and that wasn't necessarily the best choice from a business perspective, and the data really doesn't lie. So the first thing you need to do is make sure that you look at your patient demand and make sure that whatever this new device does for you, it fits the needs of your current patient base or the demographics in your area if you're a new spa. And that's really what it boils down to. So, for example, if here in Arizona, Tempe is where ASU is located. So, if I had a spa in that area, it wouldn't make any sense for me to do, anti-aging treatments. Most of my patients are going to be college students. So, that's just if you're new, you have to kind of look at your demographics. But if you're an existing spa, or maybe you're a solo injector, and this will be your first foray into devices, listen to what your patients are telling you. If you have a team, they're your best resource. Your providers can tell you what holes that you need to fill, because it's a lot easier for your practice to be profitable quickly if you're filling a need rather than trying to create a need. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is make sure that you know what your break-even point is, not just from an overall investment perspective, including your cost and interest and all the fees associated with it, but what is it going to take monthly just to make that a break-even point every month on your payment, and make sure that you know how many sessions or how many patients you have to treat after all of your expenses are taken out. How much do you have to cover that investment each month? Cash flow is king. And so you want to make sure that you're able to maintain all the other things that are going on in your business and you don't end up with a big expensive anchor around your neck. You also want to evaluate your internal readiness, because there are some things, as some of the other speakers talked about, that change when you bring devices on. If you've not had a device before, some of these devices are really big and they take up a lot of space, and they need complementary things. Like if you have a CO2 device, for example, you need a smoke evacuator. You might need a Zimmer cooler that blows the cool air and keeps your patients comfortable. Those all take up a room. And if you're a solo injector, or you're a weight loss clinic, or some of those types of practices that haven't gotten into energy-based devices yet, I think you'll be surprised at how big some of these are, and also how much heat they put out. So these devices are hot, and we had no control over our HVAC system. We didn't have zoning. And so our little front desk girls were up there freezing to death with little fuzzy blankets and space heaters under the front. And we were back in the treatment rooms just breaking out in a sweat. So it's really important that you look at how that's going to fit in your practice, and what other things, other than just a new outlet or plug or electrical circuit, that you're going to need to make that work in your practice. And staff capacity. So if you've got a bunch of busy injectors and they're busy during your peak hours, where does this fit in? Okay, how easily also is it for your staff, if they've not worked with energy-based devices and they're going from injectables or weight loss or whatever your focus is, and they're making the leap to a new injectable? That's a small hop. When you're asking someone to make a core leap from their core business to something entirely different, that can be a significant learning curve, and it can require not just the training on the device, but a mindset shift, because they've been accustomed to solving these needs with the tools that they had, and now they've got to learn the language, the benefits, and how to integrate that into their communications with the patients. And you want them to have a buy-in. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more, but you really want to make sure that your staff is kind of included in this process. And Rebecca talked a lot about training. Training is key. These manufacturers will typically give you a day training. One little tip that I've kind of learned is that let's say you get a 6 or 8 hour training. If they have pre-work or they have didactic available through a Zoom presentation like this, take up 2 hours of your single day with that trainer. If you can knock that out before they get there, it just gives you a few more hours of clinical hands-on, and that's what your providers are really going to need. The other thing is that day of training is like taking a drink from a fire hose. You're not going to take it all in. It's a lot of info. And here's what's really unfortunate. You don't even know what questions to ask. You have not had any experience with this device, and so you don't have great questions. And then they're out the door. Now, good clinical trainers stay in touch, but sometimes they're just busy and they don't have time. And hopefully, your manufacturer has some internal processes set up for support with clinical questions. I'm just going to tell you, as a provider or as an owner, plan in the purchase time, know what your costs are. Some of the earlier speakers mentioned this. It's expensive. It's expensive, especially if you go through the manufacturer. And many times there's profit in there for them. It's not just a hard cost. They're charging you one thing for clinical training and they're only paying their instructor or their trainer portion of that. So sometimes it's beneficial to stay in touch with your laser sales rep. They know a lot of the per diem trainers that'll come out on daily rate, but factor that subsequent training 60 to 90 days after you've had this device in your practice to come out, to have a trainer come out and do some additional training, some advanced training, because now you got good questions. Now you have specific case studies that you've done and you've got patient cases that you can bring to their attention, and you can talk about ways that you can improve or things that you might have been able to do better. So training has been important. And then really, to close this answer out in a nutshell, just make sure that all of these things are considered and that you're basing these choices on the data and what this tells you. If your staff's ready, you got the patient demand, you can support it with your workflow. Make those decisions not based on emotional things. Okay, even though I still think it's just as exciting. I still geek out on all this energy. It's amazing to me that we can harness all this energy and do these great things. But don't let that be the sole reason that you hop on board.
Wow, that's amazing. You've mentioned all of the good things that one should do, but what mistakes do you commonly see when it comes to integrating new devices into clinic operations?
Yeah, that's a good question. So even perfectly laid plans sometimes don't always work out. Sometimes we don't know what we don't know until we've brought that device in and we realize we've missed some things. So what I typically see is that device failure or device, integration or launch failure kind of comes down to one or all of these four things, if you kind of break it down. Lack of internal protocols or no protocols. Um, uh, under training, we talked about that. And I'm not talking about just device training, internal training on how to say consultations, things about like that. This is a big one, lack of internal marketing. Making sure that everyone, your non-clinical and clinical, anybody who's patient-facing knows their assignment, that they know how to talk about it, that they feel comfortable with it, that they're excited about it. And again, about the scheduling, you want to make sure that it's not disruptive to your workflow. That's the fourth key area. Many devices have a warm-up time. I'll just give you an example. So if you've got a back-to-back day and you're not accommodating for that, that can be a point of frustration for your providers. And when you have friction with your providers, momentum starts to fall. Okay. That's one example. Another example is if you don't have a dedicated room. I was not fortunate enough to have a dedicated room. We had a garage for all of our lasers, and I had to go drag a laser down the hallway and take it back when I was done. And so I took time between patients to turn the room. So all those things need to be taken into consideration. But I want to go back to protocols a little bit. So protocols are important, and these could be protocols that include, your SOPs, pre and post care, emergency protocols, laser safety. All of those things need to be clearly defined, and it's settings based on introductory settings based on skin type. If you don't set protocols, you're going to get inconsistent results because your providers are going to be making decisions about that with a new device that they're not comfortable with. So you need to give them some guidelines in the beginning and what you expect them to achieve with each patient, or you'll get inconsistent results. And it also creates a potential safety hazard for you. And the same thing with undertraining. Undertraining internally, you want to give them scripts. For example, I'm a big fan of scripts. I always tell our team, you don't need to read the script like a robot, but these are the three things by the end of the conversation that the patient should know about this. And they should feel comfortable, talking and bringing their own personality, because we're not in this is not a sales position. We want sales. We want people to upsell and do add-ons, but this is a consultative process and relationship building. We want to build rapport, and we don't want to do anything to damage that. So make sure that everyone feels comfortable talking about it. And internal marketing, like I said, is the buy-in, but you also want to look at your in-house marketing. So maybe displays at the front desk, displays anywhere there's a patient congregating, the restrooms, in treatment rooms, in the lobby. You want announcements. A lot of the manufacturers sell banners and in office advertising. There might be even little video loops that you can put on in your waiting area. You want to maximize that. Anywhere that a patient has eyes and is looking around, have something reminding them about this new launch. And if this is done properly, if you actually get the staff buy-in, you get everyone excited, you have your internal marketing programs going, and that includes patient announcements, decide how you're going to tell your patients about it. You can have a lot of interest built up and maybe even be pre-booking appointments for this before you even take possession of the device if this is done properly. But that's all I wanted to say about that.
That's very useful. Thank you so much, Michelle. One other question, again, with regards to the team, how can a med spa team support device success beyond the treatment room?
So that's a good question. So, you've got a core staff. You've got your front desk people, you've got your clinical providers, your managers, your practice managers. You might have consultants that do consultations for you, and of course yourself, wherever you fit into your practice. And you want to make sure that it's all congruent, again, that everybody knows the assignment. Your front desk is your front line. And so I find that making sure that your front desk knows how to bring this into conversations. If they're asked questions, they're not going to have the same level of knowledge that your clinical providers will have, but they should know about basics, patient, like the right type of candidates, patient selection, how to answer simple questions about it. They need to know where your before and after images are, how they can easily, a lot of times in the lobby, in the waiting area, the reception area, we've got the before and after books out there, but you just want to make sure that your front desk is a key part of it. They feel comfortable. And if not, it's an opportunity for you to role play with them and make sure that questions are being answered in the appropriate way and that they're giving good advice. You want to empower your consultation providers to link these devices to patient outcomes and patient goals, especially if it's new. I find that sometimes providers and consultants get in a routine. Okay, let's assume that you already have some devices and you already have multiples, and these might actually do things that other things that you have also do. So you might have an IPL that targets pigment, and you have a Pico second laser that targets pigment. You might have peels that your esthetician uses that target pigment. You might have topical products, retail items that focus on pigment. So how does your consultant know how to integrate all that in there? And so it's important that your consultants and your providers feel comfortable about it. But I find that one of two things typically happens. Some providers are hesitant because they have their comfort zone and they already know what they're going to advise when it comes to a specific concern. And then you have other providers that are so excited about new things that you start to see your business dip in your other things. And so all you're doing in that circumstance is just taking money out of your right pocket, putting in your left pocket, and you're not getting new business. You're just replacing your business with a different product. So it's important that you kind of pay attention, track the data, and make sure you're paying attention to where your sales are occurring. And if your new device is growing in revenue, but you're noticing a significant drop off in other areas, you want to balance that out and speak to your providers. If you're not seeing rebooks, if you're not seeing referrals, good reviews, those are all things that you want to pay attention to. And all of your providers might, be helping participate in that growth if they're properly trained or they're properly motivated.
I think one thing that I do come across, Michelle, a lot, the team buy-in, before making up, not a lot of thought and action and effort is put into that and just assumes that everyone will just go along with it, right? And that leads to issues down the road where not everyone is aligned and misalignment can cost a lot.
Oh my gosh, you are so dead on with that. When you're talking about integrating, and a lot of these devices layer with other treatments, they partner with things that they already have. Your staff gets behind those things when they have a part in the decision-making process, when they feel heard. And many times you're only talking to the rep because one of your loudest providers put it in your ear and begged for you to get this. I have talked to practices that are like, we weren't really ready to get another device. It's a big investment. But this provider, one of the very strong providers, consistently, was in their ear about it. And so having buy-in can really make or break a new device integration for sure into a practice.
Absolutely. One final question, Michelle. If a practice wants to grow their device-based revenue this year, what's one thing that they could do starting right away, right? For everyone
Yeah,
here.
so if they already have, devices and they're just looking at a way to try to maximize what they have, the first thing they need to do is establish a baseline. I would look across the board and see what services are underperforming and what devices you're not utilizing if it has very low utilization, and try to determine the causes behind that. So look at your patient engagement with and referrals, comments that you see on social media. You're going to talk to your providers, though. Your providers are going to be your first line when this research is going on. You're going to hear their feedback. Maybe the device isn't performing very well, so they're not talking about it anymore. Maybe they need retraining. There's a lot of things that you're going to need to know, but you're going to want to find out which devices are the lowest performing and why. And then I recommend doing a 30-day reactivation plan. And what you're going to do is you're going to pick one of those devices and you're going to focus on it and put all your resources to it for the first 30 days. And you're going to treat it just like a new launch. You're going to retrain your staff. You're going to provide the front desk with scripts. You're going to have calling scripts, answering the phone scripts, greeting. You're going to have everything planned out. And then you're going to track everything. Okay. One other thing that's really helpful is sometimes it helps to take that and rebrand it. I love to do signature services where you might layer that with another treatment. You might call it something unique that's branded to you. I love that for a lot of reasons. It's hard for patients to price shop when then nobody knows what it is. When it's a service that you branded and created yourself and they're your specific protocols. But it gives you also something that stands out in a very, very noisy and loud market. So I love those signature series. So bundle them, tie them into different treatments, promote across every channel, email, text, social media, on your website, and all the internal things. We're going to treat it just like a brand new launch. And then if you give it that kind of concerted focus, most practices can bring in, $10,000 to $25,000 in that first 30 days just by staying focused on that first device. And then just repeat that every month. Focus on a new device. Now, I want to bring up one other thing about this. We focus a lot on that initial launch. It's important that you have consistent meetings with your team, consistent huddles, that you're talking to them, that you're listening to their feedback. And you want to, like I said, your practice manager is going to be the person who is going to be responsible for doing contests, incentives, getting everyone excited. And it doesn't have to be, not everyone's entirely money motivated. It's nice when you know, and it's important that you know what motivates your team to perform. Money is a big motivator for a lot of people, but sometimes it's recognition, sometimes it's celebration, it's acknowledgement of their impact that they're having on your business. So it doesn't always have to be about that. We had something as silly as a little spin the wheel, and in the manager's office, every time someone would do, meet one of our KPIs, meet one of their goals for the day, we would spin the wheel and they'd get a little gift card or they'd get a ticket into a drawing. I mean, we gave away a Louis Vuitton once, and so for an entire month, everybody got to get a little ticket and put it into the raffle. And then when it was time to give the Louis Vuitton out, we took everybody out for a team dinner. We made a big deal, and everybody was celebrated. If they didn't meet that goal, we found something that we could reward them for and acknowledge them for, because people like that too. It's not just about the money. So if you focus on these things and you make this a core part of your business, you'll be surprised what you can do without even taking on something new.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much, Michelle. And for everybody and listening to Michelle and want to revisit those question and answers, look forward to the recap of this meeting. So we've gone through choosing the devices, financing the devices, to launching and marketing. Michelle will help you integrate that device into the clinic's flow. So what we actually promise in marketing, we are able to deliver. That brings us towards the end of all the panelists' question and answers. I'll open the room for a few questions asked in the live chat. One of the questions is for you, Rebecca, from John Doe or Jane Doe. They say, can we get device replacement insurance from a third party instead of, the company's service policy?
That's an interesting question. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
I'll answer that if you let me.
Wonderful. Please.
Okay.
Yes.
It's a twofold answer. First, I know for a fact that American Express has a doctor program with their lines of credits, where American Express will actually, and it's not just doctors, they'll actually do it for like electronics and all kinds of stuff, but they do have a specific doctor program, doctor credit card program where they will double the warranty of any purchase that takes place on those, inclusive of medical devices. So I know that. So if the doctor has an Amex, they can buy their device and Amex will pay the manufacturer the fee for the extended warranty for up to 2 years. And then I looked into this years and years ago to see if there were alternative ways for people to extend, just like we do with extended warranties on cars, right? Like outsource it. The challenge that takes place, and quite honestly, the answer in short is no, because ultimately there is an element of, I think a lot of people think that these manufacturers are just trying to stick it to you in every way that they can, and that these warranties aren't necessarily warranted in regards to the price point. But in truth, we have to ship them back to us. If we're warranting them, we're shipping them back. We're paying to have them come to us. We're servicing them. It's taking our technicians time. We're replacing them, maybe replacing the device altogether, shipping it back to you and maintaining that support. So there's certainly a cost to it, right? The other problem is that if these are prescriptive devices and these companies are FDA governed, we have to remain compliant. And so in order to maintain a warranty on any one of these devices, we have to make sure that they are certified with all the manufacturer parts and working in proper order so that nothing's going to happen in your practice to you, to your patients, etc. So I have never found a separate company that can prolong or extend a warranty outside of the manufacturer, but I do know that Amex does double the warranties when you purchase the device with an Amex.
Thank you. Thank you, Sally, for answering that. You also answered a few other questions, and I do want to share this with everyone else. Grace asks, how do we get a good price on the device? And Sally mentioned BOA when you reach out to purchase. So everybody do that. There was one anonymous attendee which asked skin analysis devices that we recommend, Image Pro, Halo, Sunlight, or Hybrid. Those were the recommended choices. Casey Leber asks, and I think this is more routed to you, Rebecca, because you touched base on this with regards to financing and how one could, land in a situation that they hadn't planned for. Basically they ask, how do you know if the loan is predatory? The paperwork is so overwhelming. Is there anything specific that one should look out for?
Generally the predatory terms aren't going to be outlined in that, in that paperwork. So even if you were to review it with a fine tooth comb, you don't know what you don't know, which is really, kind of how they get away with this. My number one piece of advice would be to have a business attorney. And I know they're very expensive. But they might bill you for a half an hour to an hour to review the paperwork. A CPA, the CPA that you're using for your business taxes, you can have them take a look and maybe dive deeper into some of the finance questions. I know, again, a lot of times there will not be a rate disclosed within the document. And just when you're buying your home or you're buying your car, your rate is going to be disclosed. And there would be a table of what all of the payments, what is your payment on your principal, what payment is going towards interest. If they can't provide you with the rate directly on the paperwork, which they often do not, there's no percentage, it's just the amount you're financing and then your monthly payment. But in a lot of cases, though, what you can do there very simply to kind of figure out what the simple rate is, you do what your monthly payment is times the term of the loan, and you're going to see very quickly that, that comes out to be a 20% something, interest rate or higher. So, but if they can't provide a table for you of what your payments look like, what percentage is going to interest, if there is not specifically a buyout clause, those are all reasons to assume that. Sometimes I see paperwork that is so, you said it's very overwhelming. Sometimes the sheets are just like a single piece of paper, that's where you really know you got to be careful because they're not disclosing anything to you. But ultimately, an attorney and a finance person is your best bet.
Can I also make one more suggestion? Before you sign anything with one of these lenders or preferred lenders by a manufacturer, because Rebecca is so right, there's reasons that these manufacturers work with these lenders because these lenders are intentional about getting these things done fast, and they do it in this way that's just like, so like here, it's electronic, sign here, sign there, sign this. And it was just like, what just happened? And you never had the chance to read anything anyway. While manufacturers hate it, the reps hate it, your bank or your credit union, and definitely a credit union, knows you and your business, and you have a working relationship with them, and they have to be transparent. Don't be afraid to not only shop it with the other lenders within the space, and there's so many, and there are some honest ones. Specifically, Wells Fargo has a doctor specific program. They have a doctor MD DO. They actually have a dental specific program. I've sold to a lot of dental and aesthetics over the years. And those are very, very transparent lending programs. But go to your own bank. Go to your own bank and say, listen, I'm looking for this. You know what's coming in. You know what I'm capable of doing. What are my terms? And it does take longer. Your bank will take longer, and it will drive that rep crazy that he has no control over it. But if you want to stay protected and you want transparency, don't sign on the dotted line if it's like this. Just shop around.
Michelle, do you want to add to that or to any of the other questions? I do
You
see
know
you're
what?
unmuted. Yeah.
Nothing really big, but when you're asking about how do you know if the loan's predatory, my answer is assume that it is. Just assume they all are. You
Oh,
want to make sure that your interests are protected, and getting someone who has legal experience is a good idea. It is costly in the beginning, but these devices are a big expense. And not only they're a big expense, but like Rebecca said, there are some crazy things in there that are different about this type of financing than any other thing that you might purchase. And they can be very surprising. But you want to look at different alternatives for financing as well. Don't just rely on the manufacturer to help guide you in that. Talk to your personal bankers that are handling your business account. Look for different ways to save, because many times the interest is just killer on some of these loans, and there is no benefit to paying them off early. I hear a lot of people out there talking about, their goal is to pay it off, and I hate feeling under debt, so I can totally relate to that feeling that you want to pay it off as quickly as possible. But if you're not saving anything on interest, and you've paid that device, and then you have, $10 or $20,000 in additional revenue that was generated by that device, does that serve your practice better for you to hire people or use it on marketing, or does it serve you more to pay up the bank? And my answer would be use it in your practice. But those are personal choices that you're going to have to make. If you're not going to get any benefit out of paying it off early, other than just feeling that relief, my advice is, keep your cash flow focused on growing your business.
amazing. Thank you so much for being in, Michelle. Uh, I think, we've had an amazing segment. I don't know about the participants, but I feel confident in going in and purchasing a device, even though I have no background, right? So thank you so much for sharing all your insights. I'm sure it was very, very helpful to our attendees and everyone out there who's looking to purchase a device or already purchased and stuck in a bad situation. Here is your dream team. Do reach out and do try to solve the situation. And we've gone through, everything today with regards to buying, purchasing a device, launching, marketing, and scaling revenue. If there are more questions, look forward to the recap email that is sent along with the video link, and we'll be happy to share your questions with the panelists. Thank you so much again, Rebecca, Sally, Naren, and Michelle, for your time tonight. I hope you have a wonderful evening. All right. Take care. Bye.